A forgotten letter was found after 40 years. The old wooden box wasn't supposed to exist. At least, that's what everyone believed. When workers began demolishing the abandoned farmhouse, one of them accidentally smashed through a hidden section of the attic floor. And that's when they found it. A small metal box covered in dust. Inside was a yellow envelope. The date written on it made everyone freeze. June 14th, 1986, 40 years earlier. But what shocked them even more was the name written on the front. To Emily. Only if I never come back. Nobody knew who Emily was. But within days, that forgotten letter would uncover a heartbreaking secret buried for 4 decades. And change several lives forever. Emily Parker was 78 years old when a local journalist knocked on her door. She lived alone in a small town where almost nobody knew her past. When the journalist showed her a photograph of the envelope, the color disappeared from her face. Her hands began shaking. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Then she whispered, "Where did you find that?" The journalist immediately understood. This wasn't just an old letter. This letter mattered. A lot. 40 years earlier, Emily had been deeply in love. His name was Daniel Brooks. He was 23, kind, funny, the kind of man who remembered every birthday and every dream she ever shared. Everyone expected them to marry, even their families. But in the summer of 1986, Daniel suddenly disappeared. One day he was there, the next day he was gone. No goodbye, no explanation, no phone call, nothing. Emily waited. For weeks, then months, then years. At first, she believed something terrible had happened. Later, she convinced herself he simply didn't love her anymore. Eventually, she stopped asking questions. But she never stopped hurting. The journalist carefully handed her the letter. Emily stared at it, her eyes filled with tears. 40 years. 40 years she had waited for answers. Now those answers sat in her trembling hands. Yet she couldn't open it. Not alone. So the journalist called her granddaughter, Sophie. Within an hour, Sophie arrived. She had never seen her grandmother cry before. Not once. When she entered the room and saw the envelope, she immediately knew something important was happening. Emily took a deep breath, then slowly broke the seal. The first line shattered her heart. "My dearest Emily." Her voice cracked. She stopped reading. Sophie gently squeezed her hand. Emily continued, "If you are reading this, it means I failed to return." The room fell silent. Every word seemed heavier than the last. "I need you to know something before anyone else tells a different story. I never left because I stopped loving you." Emily covered her mouth. For 40 years, she had believed exactly that. And now, in a single sentence, everything changed. The letter revealed a shocking truth. Just days before Daniel disappeared, he had received devastating medical news. Doctors discovered a rare heart condition. At that time, treatment options were limited. The chances of survival were uncertain. Daniel had become terrified, not of dying, but of becoming a burden. He feared Emily would spend her life caring for him. So he made a decision. A terrible decision. He left town secretly to seek treatment in another state. Without telling anyone, without saying goodbye. Emily's tears rolled down her cheeks. Sophie could hardly breathe. But the biggest surprise was still waiting. The next paragraph changed everything. "I left this letter with my brother and asked him to give it to you if I never returned." Emily froze. Daniel had a brother, Robert. The same Robert who still lived in town. The same Robert she occasionally saw at the grocery store. The same Robert who had never mentioned any letter. Not once. For 40 years. Sophie immediately drove to Robert's house. The old man opened the door. One look at the envelope told him why they had come. His face collapsed. Years of guilt suddenly appeared in his eyes. He invited them inside. And then he confessed. Robert had hidden the letter. Not intentionally at first. He explained that Daniel left suddenly. Then, months later, Robert himself was involved in a serious accident. The envelope ended up forgotten inside the farmhouse attic. Years passed, then decades. Eventually, he assumed it had been destroyed. He never knew it still existed. But he admitted something else. Something even worse. He never searched hard enough. And he never told Emily the truth. Because every year that passed made it harder to admit his mistake. Emily expected anger. She expected rage. Instead, she felt sadness. Everyone in that room had lost something. Daniel lost his future. Robert lost his brother. And Emily lost 40 years of answers. But there was still one final page remaining in the letter. The last page. The page nobody had read yet. With trembling hands, she unfolded it. Daniel's handwriting became shakier near the end. The words seemed rushed, as if time itself was running out. If fate is kind, I will come home myself and laugh about this letter one day. Emily smiled through tears. Then she continued, but if I don't, promise me one thing. Everyone leaned closer. Don't spend your life waiting for ghosts. Emily stopped breathing. Those words hit harder than anything else. Because that's exactly what she had done. For 40 years. The final sentence was written alone at the bottom. Short, simple, powerful. Every day I loved you was the happiest day of my life. The room erupted into tears. Even Robert couldn't stop crying. Neither could Sophie. And Emily finally let herself grieve. Not for the man who disappeared, but for the man who never stopped loving her. Over the following weeks, the story spread across the country. Thousands of people read Daniel's words. Many contacted Emily. Some shared their own stories of lost love. Others shared stories about letters that arrived too late. The forgotten envelope became a symbol, a reminder that silence can change lives. Several months later, Emily returned to the farmhouse one last time. The building was nearly gone. Only a small section remained. She stood where the letter had been found. Then she placed a fresh white rose on the ground. For Daniel. For the years they lost. For the goodbye they never got. As she turned to leave, Sophie noticed something strange. For the first time in decades, Emily wasn't crying. She was smiling, a peaceful smile. The kind that comes only when a wound finally begins to heal. 40 years late. But not too late. Because sometimes a forgotten letter doesn't just reveal the past. Sometimes it finally sets the future free.